Welcome to the Confessions of an IT Business Owner podcast, where we believe that healthy cash flow is critical for your IT business. Automation is paramount, and building trust with your clients by looking professional will help grow your business. I'm your host, Ryan Goodman, and today you'll learn about some profound struggles related to owning and growing an IT business and how Rick Jordan from ReachOut IT overcame them.
If you're not focusing on the offense right now, you're going to be playing defense the entire time and just keep losing ground, to the point to where your valuation is so low that you'll have to either just fold or sell for pennies on the dollar.
Here is the podcast with Rick. Hey guys, Ryan Goodman here, president of ConnectBooster. I am here with Rick Jordan, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro, and I'm also going to allow you to
do it.
Impart upon our audience. But Rick is the CEO of ReachOut IT. He's also a public speaker. I mean, he's been featured in speaking in NASDAQ, Harvard clubs of Boston and New York City, as well as a bunch of other places. Isn't it West Point Academy?
Yeah, man, that was a trip. I was just talking to a pastor of mine, a pastor friend of mine yesterday, because he actually spoke at West Point as well. And he did a funeral there for a Secret Serviceman, and Bill Clinton was right in front of him.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, President Bill Clinton. It was wild. Yeah, so we had it's like we were both on the grounds. It was cool. It was like a common bonding moment. But I didn't have a president standing next to me. You know.
Next time.
Let's do it.
You are also the host of your own podcast, the All In podcast, which is extremely popular. So, hey man, we're in the presence of a celebrity. Thanks for hanging out with me.
Oh man, I'm excited. I appreciate you having me on, man. I love this. You know, I love just being around interesting people, and you definitely qualify as interesting people.
I appreciate that. All right, man, I'm going to dig in. Let's get some of the basics out of the way.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us just 100,000-foot view of your overall businesses, ventures, but also I think it's important to tell people where they can find you online as well.
Yeah, that one's easy. That's just at Mr. Rick Jordan on all platforms. You can hit me up there. Yeah, and there's links to the show, the podcast, everything that's there. But that's a great question, man, because it's so interesting right now, and I'm sure we'll get into more of the COVID and coronavirus talk a little later on. But my origin story, in tech starts years and years ago. I am CEO of ReachOut Technology, ReachOut IT right now. That's been around for about a decade.
Okay.
We do right around $2 million a year. That's how we finished out the year last year. Even this year we booked in the first quarter alone about $900K.
That's excellent.
And that was even before, so we're constantly growing, man. And there's reasons for that too, which I'm sure we'll probably get into. And that was even pre-corona is when we started booking all this business this year. But I started, man, actually in music because I'm an ordained pastor also, along with being CIA trained and all this other stuff, it's like anybody else out there have all these different aspects to them, so it's like I've got all these different areas and they've kind of coalesced into one now, and it's really cool. Because I love tech, but how I got into tech was actually in music, playing guitar and drums and taking around and looking at, all the different effects pedals that I could use and how to blend them together and really honing in on that. So I'm like, this stuff's pretty cool. Yeah. And then I was going to be a cop when I was 18, but that didn't pan out. Yeah. Because I've got a heart to try to protect people and really just kind of lift them up, And that's one of the service aspects of who I am. I was going to join the military. That didn't work out either. Neither did the cop thing for many reasons that are actually in my book, just some crazy stuff going on, uncovering, different conspiracies and different other ethical conundrums that exist within law enforcement. I love our police officers. I support our police officers. Just like anything else, humans are humans.
Yeah.
And everybody needs help. And that's why I don't judge either. It's awesome. But everybody can be brought up from anything is one of my, I can get so far into philosophy and how I feel about things, just lifting people up. But getting into tech, man, I started and I cut my teeth with Merrill Lynch back in the day, before they were acquired by Bank of America. And it was like enterprise IT. I deployed 12,000 servers and 150,000 workstations across all their branch offices in the US, built those suckers, shipped them out. It was interesting, but it really helped me dive into this stuff. I'm like, maybe this is something that I'm pretty good at. And I was.
I would say you had to be at that point.
Yeah, exactly. It was do or die when you're doing that and you're thrust into it. It was really cool because it was one of the, And this is another thing that I live by, man, is that you always need coaches and mentors in your life. And the reason I am where I am today is because of the coaches and mentors that I've had in my life. And this was a dude who had known me for 10 years. I was only 18 when I was doing this stuff for Merrill Lynch.
Wow.
And I'm 40 now, so you're talking 22 years ago. And he just saw something in me, man, and pulled me out of the warehouse at this place and said, I'm going to throw you in here. We're going to train you on the job. And if it wasn't for him, man, his name was Wyatt Niswanger. And I still remember him to this day, because he was really the first one that saw something in me. That's and cool. Kind of that first mentor, that first coach that I had.
That's cool.
And then from there on, I started working for Geek Squad a little after that too. I was the very first Geek Squad agent in Chicago.
Wow.
Which was one of the first 7 nationwide when Best Buy acquired them.
Wow.
And we talk with people all the time. I skipped over something pretty important because in Geek Squad, I was one of the best salespeople that they had. They were always asking me, from corporate saying, why are your per ticket averages 3 to 4 times higher than everyone else at one of our other 6 test stores?
Yeah.
And it was as simple as this. I'm like, dude, I just ask them what they need.
Yeah. Ask the question.
Exactly. Instead of just going in and doing the job like a Comcast tech or something like that, and just being condescending because I maybe know more than those people. That's a blessing to be in that role when you know more than someone, because now you can teach them and help lift them up.
Right.
It's really cool, man. But when I was working for Geek Squad, I shifted over and wrote the whole book for Best Buy for Business when they launched that for sales. And got into, I crossed over to the dark side, as I call it. Went from the tech over to the business side.
Yeah.
And especially into sales. It was a lot of fun. But the first time I spoke, though, you mentioned I was a public speaker. This was when I was 16, and maybe this is why this was easier for me. I don't know. My dad passed when I was 16 and had leukemia, and my younger brother and sister, 10 and 11 years old at the time, I helped raise them for a couple of years because my mom was, she was grieving for a couple of years after that, man.
Intense.
I'll never forget the close relationship that those two had, and how they would always, and my wife and I do this now, always hug and kiss in front of your kids. So your kids can see that, wow, my parents actually love each other. And it's really cool having that environment. We've got that at our house now. But the first time I spoke in public was at my dad's funeral when I was 16. And it was just about a 10 or 12 minute talk. But that was in front of 300 people because he was only 46 when he passed. And when you're younger, I've noticed too throughout life, because I just turned 40 last year. When you're younger, you seem to know more people and more people know you, than versus when you age in life and get a little more seasoned, there's exactly, your circle kind of condenses a little bit. So there was a lot of people that showed up, man. And that was the first time I spoke in public was at that point. And still it was motivational and inspirational. Just talking about how we can turn this moment into, I remember telling my dad, looking down at his coffin saying, I'm not going to let you down. And then turning to everybody else that was there attending. And this is an opportunity to take what was bad and celebrate what was good prior to this and utilize all that and thrust us forward to the rest of life. My dad set a great example, man. I'm grateful for him. But even in that, saying, you know what, we can celebrate his life and I don't let him be forgotten to this point. And this is one way that I honor him, is trying to serve other people. Whether it's other MSPs like we're doing right now and telling them how things are working great or how they're not working so great, and they can learn from you and I. I love that. But that's how I first got started in public speaking, man.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, it was crazy, right? Then around 28 years old, because I was telling you I was working for Best Buy for Business, right? They killed that entire division right at the recession, the last recession. That's when I was launched into where I'm at now. That's when I started doing, I had one MSP first that failed, actually for 2 years. I say that it failed because it just wasn't structured right.
Sure.
It was still, but then I rebooted it back in 2010. And that's how I got to where I'm at right now. That reboot is interesting, but the recession is something that's interesting to focus on, if you don't mind, because you were talking about, I know I'm talking a lot, man. You're not asking a lot of questions.
No, this is good. And I love it because, I wanted to understand parallels between now and then and what you're seeing inside of business. So
it's interesting because I'm seeing a lot of similarities from now, with coronavirus and COVID compared to our last recession, and everyone's, starting to call this even maybe a depression, something like that. I don't see it that way, because you remember how it was 12 years ago. The market's crashed way worse than where they're at right now. The housing market, it's taken a pretty big hit and it's going to continue to go down, but that was really the catalyst for the last recession.
Right.
This is something different. It's a pandemic. It's still extremely serious and tragic, but I'm seeing some parallels in this from a business perspective. And that I started my MSP, or going into that space, launching on my own during a recession. Mm-hmm. And I always see opportunities, and there's everybody talking about, opportunities are abundant right now and all this. But I think they're presenting it in the wrong way too, because they're presenting it as taking advantage of the situation.
Sure.
Versus where I see the opportunities coming will really be about 6 months from now, when everybody's trying to rebuild. Right now for MSPs, it's a time to really start to serve your clients more and try to figure out ways where you can do more for them now without charging more.
Agreed.
And there's a way to do this. There's totally ways to do that. We started shifting our focus on our rhythms with engagement with clients about 3 months ago, even before COVID hits, before we knew this was even a thing, where we could touch our clients more and also spend less time. It's an interesting concept, but we started looking at, everybody knows QBRs. Everybody gets that. But we started breaking those down. And the QBRs, you've always got to go through the technical garbage. And I love the human aspect to IT. If you couldn't get that from me now, that I have a very human side of me versus the tech side. I'm still a nerd at heart though, man. I mean, that's how I got into this, right? Was dinking around with all the music effects pedals and guitar effects pedals and everything.
Right.
I built my first computer when I was like 10 years old or something, an old Tandy computer.
Awesome.
that it was crazy. But there's a lot of opportunity that exists right now to really serve and show your clients that you're more present now than ever. Increase your connection points. And that doesn't necessarily increasing headcounts. That doesn't mean increasing the amount of time that you spend with them. For us, it was actually pulling it back, but making those touch points more frequent.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you're talking about intentionality inside of
you got it
as well, right?
Absolutely. I went through, and I'd be glad to share this spread. I'm actually launching a site here soon too, mspthrive.com, because during this, I see this as a way to even provide MSPs some of the cool things that I've done and how I use to manage my business. Just, no charge or anything for this stuff. I just want to throw it out there. Reason being is 12 years ago, I was in that boat where my twins were born. I didn't say this before. My twins were born right after I was laid off, 2 weeks after I was laid off from Best Buy.
You jumped into the deep end of the pool.
Dude, it was intense. First off, I mean, my twins were great. At that point, I feel sorry for any parent who has multiples their second round, because if you have a single, then multiples, you've already been used. Exactly. When you have the multiples first, you just don't know any better.
This is normal.
You just do it. And then when our third came along, it was like, man, this is just the simplest thing in the world. We'll just let him be and let him live his own life, whatever. But it got to the point sometimes, man, and this is how rough it can get, even now. And I'm sure there's some smaller MSPs that are really, really feeling the pain. Because I've had years at this point to build up to a point to where there's a little bit more reserve, and I have a little bit more business knowledge than most to be able to pivot at this point in time and plan things out so that everybody can thrive again. It was to the point, man, 12 years ago where it was literally, do I pay my mortgage or do I buy my kids formula?
Yeah, those are super tough.
Yeah, and that's like a non-choice, right?
Yeah.
Because do I keep a roof over their head or do I feed them? Yeah. How do I do that? And there were times to where our power was shut off and I couldn't pay it until 2 days later during this time period too, when I launched my MSP back in 2008, to where it was a condo that we owned, to where I would run an extension cord from the refrigerator, because that's where the breast milk was, that's where the formula was stored, out to the hall to the common area and plug it in and leach power off of the association. Yeah, and I look back at that and it's like, was that ethical? Probably not. It was survival.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe there was some other ways to do it. I don't know. But what do you do in those time periods when you're staring at the faces of 2-3 month olds right at you and say, I need to provide for you somehow. How can I do this? Exactly. And then of course, after that, I let the association know, and then I paid them a little extra saying, for 2 days, I took some power from you. What's that worth? $50, $100, whatever it is. I just needed that bridge, almost like a working capital loan. There you go, for my family.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, the title of your book is Situational Ethics, which you've literally just described right there.
It's crazy, man.
Is that also a story that you talk about inside of that publication?
Ironically, no, but it probably should be in there because it fits the premise of the whole book.
Yeah.
That ethics are always, to me anyways, 99% of the time, whatever, a matter of dollars and cents.
Mm-hmm.
They're always a matter of an economic proposition.
Yeah.
So what will make you cross the line, and what line is that? For me, it was staring at 2-3 month olds that I had to provide, to where I just needed electricity for my refrigerator for 2 days.
Yeah.
And I made that right so that my conscience would be okay.
Right.
But there's others. I mean, there's stories, man. I mean, with insider threats, because I could go down rabbit holes with that. But with our clients, to where I've stopped a salesperson selling a $25 million book of business to my client's largest competitor, catching him in the act with vehicle GPS in the parking lot of their largest competitor, ready to sell that thing. I mean, just crazy stuff, man. But right now, I see a lot of, because if we look back at 2008, there was a lot of people like me, especially in the tech field, that were displaced, didn't have a job anymore. What do? They started their own business, whether it's break fix, MSP, whatever. Now I could see this happening again 6 months from now. And this is important for the MSPs out there, because I think we're going to have a lot of coronapreneurs that come out of this scenario, because those individuals that might have worked for an MSP before, or maybe they might have been internal IT at a large corporation, they don't have jobs.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? So like me, it's a matter of economic proposition most of the time. What are they going to do? They're probably going to take a look at if you're an MSP, this is insider threats, right? This is cybersecurity, human security within your own organization right now. Mm-hmm. If you had to lay some people off during this time, make sure that your customers are protected.
Right.
Because I know when I started, now Best Buy eliminated the division, so it was a little bit more ethical, but I had Buffalo Wild Wings, a franchise owner who owned 6, that came with me from that, who was my very first client. Right. I could see that happening to some other MSPs, to where if they have to lay somebody off, that person, maybe they have twins like I did and they have to feed them. What are they going to do?
I have not, funny enough, that has not crossed my mind in terms of a threat inside of this landscape. That's but I think really, really relevant. Really relevant. Court awareness as to, the situation that individuals inside of our organizations, if they were to be let go, where does that put the company overall?
You got it. And it doesn't matter if they're a good person or not. They probably are good people. Yeah. But it comes down to that one word we talked about before, which is survival. Yeah. Or protection, and meaning protection of your current economic status, your current lifestyle, putting food on your table. Yeah. And then beyond that, they'll pivot. Maybe they'll go back to work. With that MSP, they just did some stuff on the side with the side hustle, a little moonlighting here and there for now, and they'll go back to the MSP. But just be wary, I would say, to all MSPs, just take a look at your customer list and make sure you have good relationships and you're increasing your connection points now, especially if you've had to lay some of your staff off. Now they're without a job, they're on unemployment, but what are they thinking? They don't know if they're going back or not. Look at PPP. I mean, how many people got funded?
Oh gosh. Yeah.
I didn't. I didn't get funded.
Was it 80? I don't want to throw out statistics. Yeah. Super dangerous, but it was a really high percentage. I think it was like 80% that applied.
It was insane.
Did not get it to actually hit their account.
Right on. And payroll wise, I mean, mine was under 200K for the loan for those couple of months, but I know a lot of banks were prioritizing the larger clients because they would make more in processing from those.
Yeah.
Either way. If you don't have PPP and you've had to lay your staff off, that person, even though they're a good person, has now become a liability.
Right.
And I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I see this happening.
Be mindful of the situation and the stuff that you're hitting me with right now. I was like, man, that is something. And I've been on a lot of webinars and I've been on a lot of panel discussions.
Yeah, man.
That is the first time that that specific subject has come up. So court awareness, guys, this is really good. This might be the only place you hear that. So pay attention.
Probably. And I've seen that, we've had clients too, to where there's been fires on their floors at law firms, and my team comes back and tells me, they're like, oh my gosh, I had a fire. We're in disaster recovery mode for them. Thank God we've got all the right solutions in place. They're still working. All their stuff is spun up in the cloud, everything else. And they're thinking the tech side, and I'm thinking, how'd that thing start? That's where my brain goes. And this comes back to the law enforcement side, and then being trained by the CIA a few years ago as a civilian for contract work. But it was a water cooler. One dude mentioned, who works for me, he goes, that thing was moved like 6 feet away from where it was usually. I don't know if maybe it started and someone saw it. I'm like, show me a picture. And then I'm just looking at a photo, man. I see this little wire coil going from the compressor on this water cooler up to the power supply. I'm like, that shouldn't be there.
Wow.
Weird. And then sure enough, the detectives missed it, man. And as soon as I tipped them off to that, that's when they came back in and ruled it arson.
Wow.
And that was an insider threat. That was somebody who worked for my client that did this and just got disgruntled and then tried to burn the house down, literally. It's crazy. That's the stuff that's out there. But I do want to give people hope too, because I see right now in the MSP space, this is so interesting to me, and it's been happening already. And I think there's an acceleration that we're going to see because of COVID, is a consolidation. And even more so with these coronapreneurs, as I'm calling them, that are entering the market now, that means more competition.
Right.
Because there's about 142,000, I've looked at them, I've looked at the numbers, 142,000 MSPs across the entire US right now. Now, some of them I'm sure are going to fall off the map.
Right.
But other ones are going to be consolidated. Exactly. I'm actually in acquisition mode right now myself, because I'm looking to acquire those who are my size and lower right now, because we're building up. We're actually going public later this year too, which is another whole story in itself. But it's cool, man, because I see myself 12 years ago, and this actually might be something to consider for some smaller MSPs. One I'm in active talks right now, the reason and the why he wants to sell, he's been around for 15 years.
Sure.
Does about $1.5 million in revenue. The reason why he wants to sell is because he doesn't like the weight on his shoulders. He never did.
Right.
I get that. Even though he wants to help somebody else thrive and build something bigger than himself.
Right.
Which is cool. So if it's not the case to where maybe you're making $500K a year revenue, $300K a year, that means you might be taking home $50,000, $60,000.
Right.
That's it, which is crazy to me too, because the average small business owner takes home about $59,900 every year. That's also stats from the SBA, man. How do you live on that?
I don't know.
Especially when you have a family.
Yeah.
So now with everyone hard hit, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are really, really, really good techs. They just don't like the business side or never learn the business side. So with MSP Thrive that I'm putting out there, let's get them the right information. But as part of this hope they can grab onto, but maybe also they might want to sell or find somebody to merge in with and build something bigger. I know MSPs, 5 of them that converge, and built like this monster MSP.
Right.
One's a COO, one's a COO, one's a CTO. They just started going through all the C's, man.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it ends up being a right seat on the bus.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And how to, right seat in the canoe, making sure everybody's rowing in the same direction. And
you got it.
Oftentimes, you need collaboration, and then being able to find those different skill sets.
You do.
I like that attitude of finding opportunity, not only inside of your business, looking to make acquisition this time, but also, from what I'm gathering, the philosophy is it's helping to bolster up that individual or the team associated with the company that you're bringing into your fold.
That's exactly.
I mean, everyone's winning in that type of scenario, and finding those common goals and then attacking.
Exactly. I had a question posed to me because I have a team that's putting together the public offering right now, and I was always of this flawed mindset. It's like, oh, I need to own 51%. I need to maintain that amount of stock because I'm the captain. I need to know where I'm headed. I'm the one that has to guide the ship. Then they start telling me, Zuckerberg, Facebook, he only owns like 22% or 28%. Yeah, something like that. And they start Elon Musk, same way, going through the entire gambit of all these insane entrepreneurs who own such a small percentage of their company. And they said, Rick, would you rather, and this is for the MSPs, I'm using hypothetical numbers here in this merging concept, or acquisition concept. Would you rather own 100% of a $500,000 company, a $500K company? Or would you be okay with maybe merging with somebody and owning half and building a $5 million company?
Right.
Is 100% of 500K better, or is 50% of 5 million better?
Right.
That's it. And
I hope your mindset is the one.
Exactly. Yeah.
That mindset, but
yeah. There's some men that want to push through, and that's cool, and they should. Because I was one of those guys that pushed through.
Yeah.
But to your point too, there's a lot of MSPs, and this is one I had on one of my shows. I got so passionate about this, man, and started telling people to close their doors, shut down their business. If this was the case, if you don't get excited when payroll comes around, if you don't get excited when you're signing those checks or clicking the approve button on your payroll process or whatever it is, metaphorically signing the checks.
Yeah.
If that's not you, you don't have a right to be in business. And this is where I give the straight truth on a lot of things too. Because if you don't get excited about the impact you can make in your people's lives,
right,
you should not be the captain of that ship.
Agreed.
And that's how I've felt. I've got a canvas outside my office door that just says serve first. And that's what everyone sees. All my people see when they walk into my office is serve first.
Yeah.
And I love that, man. I've always said, I love payroll time, because the more checks that I sign, metaphorically, that means the more lives that I'm able to impact, the more families that I'm able to help.
Absolutely. I think, is it Zig Ziglar? This is throwback, but help enough people get what they want, you ultimately get what you want, if that's your attitude.
That's dead on. Yep. You got it.
Of servant leadership. Hey guys, Ryan Goodman here, president at ConnectBooster and your host for this fine podcast. We want to take a quick break from our episode and thank you for listening. We wouldn't do this if it weren't for you, so thank you for sticking with us on this adventure. We also want to thank Rick for joining us on today's episode. You can find out more about Rick and ReachOut IT at reachoutit.com. Rick has given us a lot of fantastic information about his struggles and successes with owning an IT business. And there's a lot more coming after this break. If you want to learn more about ReachOut IT and their services, give them a call, send an email, throw a carrier pigeon if you have to. They want to help you out. Now, before we get back to the episode, we want to let you know all of the ways that you can find us online, starting with connectbooster.com/podcast. That's where all our new episodes go up first. So if you want to listen right away, check out connectbooster.com/podcast and sign up for our podcast email list. Episodes are also available on iTunes, Spotify, and Google as well. So subscribe to our channel or find us on your favorite podcast platform, and they'll let you know when new episodes are ready to listen to. If you want to connect with us or be a guest on the podcast, email us at podcast@connectbooster.com or send us a message on Facebook or Twitter, and we'll point you in the right direction. Lastly, if you like the podcast, tweet about it using hashtag #ITConfessions. We don't pay to promote the show, so sharing the show is really the best way to let us know that you like it. Thanks again for listening to the Confessions of an IT Business Owner. We'll get back to the podcast and talk to you soon. A lot of what you're talking about really leads into my next question.
Man.
Where we spent a lot of our really first time just kind of hanging out was last year. We've worked together in a capacity between, kind of like vendor partner relationship for a few years, but got to spend some time with you on a boat, cruising around Manhattan.
It was pretty cool. It was a decent boat.
Yeah, it was great going under the Brooklyn Bridge, and the scenery is beautiful. I was really impressed with your philosophy around, there's a lot of times that we can control outcomes to a certain degree. We can help manipulate our environment to ourselves for opportunity, but there's also a lot of things where, we can't adjust what happens to us, but the thing we can adjust is our attitude around it and how we react to it. And, you've really hit on a lot of that. What are some of the ways, that you are taking that knowledge, because as a leader, that also has to drive down to your team. Are there specific ways that you try to help implement your personal philosophies to drive down into the individuals in your business, so they're continuing to operate the business? Because you're a very busy guy.
Yeah.
The way you want the business to run. Are there any ways that you're being intentional about that?
There is, yeah. And you're right on, man, because I transitioned, like I said, I went over to the dark side a while back. So even though at the beginning days of my MSP, I was a dude in server closets, I was a dude underneath the desks. And then I got really, really sick in 2015. Okay. And I had a gangrenous gallbladder. No one could figure it out for 8 months. I was less than a day away from dying when they found out what this was and pulled it out. But it was after that moment to where I really shifted over to the dark side and saying, I'm plowing forward, because that I couldn't control. Just like you're talking about here, I could not control that, but I absolutely could control my response to it, making it through it. And pressing on from that, I shifted. I completely took myself out of the tech side of the business at that point. And that's when we were only doing $500K a year too.
Was that hard to let go of the purse strings?
Transition. At first, it was shifting my mind to that because it would be just natural pulls, and it was more like mental muscle memory. Trying to dive back into that stuff. But for me, I had the tragic events. I could see where if someone didn't have that life-altering events, it would be very tough. But for me, it was a complete shift at that point. I mean, like no looking back kind of a thing. And that's, I believe a lot in that too, is burning the net. It's no backup plan. Once you make a decision, you just drive forward. And I teach my people that too. That's one thing. There's no might and there's no should. Those are two words that are forbidden in my MSP. Because there isn't, this might work or this should work. Let's just see how it goes. Who wants to hear that from a customer perspective, man?
No.
How much confidence does that instill?
Nope.
But to your point, that's part of the culture that you teach, and there's things that I do in order to make sure that I still have touch points with my team. One is WWW, Wine and Whiskey Wednesday, 4:00 every Wednesday. We all get together. Now it's on Zoom, so it used to be, they're missing a little bit that I bring in some pretty decent wine and pretty scotch and whiskey.
Everyone's clinking the webcam.
Exactly. Yeah. So now they're stuck with what they have in their house, so instead of Macallan, it might be Jack, and instead of
that McCarty Limone, man, that still gives me goosebumps.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. But those are ways that I stay connected. And during those times too, that's when I train out culture, and it's just bringing up conversation. It's talking about scenarios with customers and then training them on, like those two things, the mights and the should, or going through our core values. We just had 4 new people start this week in the midst of all this. And that's my part in this. So they go through all the operations and systems training and the process and procedures and everything. But the very first thing they go through is me for an hour and a half. Nothing but culture.
Fabric, yeah.
Exactly. And that sets the stage and the tone for everything else that they go through this entire week. But those constant, just like you need to have constant touch points with your customers, you need to have constant touch points with your staff.
Yeah.
And everyone, whether they like it or not, most of them do, they're forced to listen to my podcast. Yeah. So they're forced to follow me on social media. Not forced, but it's just follow me.
How this works. Yeah.
Exactly. Then I pop up in their feed. Exactly. Yeah. Then they get little trickles, and it's not like I'm saying, hey, you need to be a Facebook friend with me. No, I have a public figure page. Yeah. Just follow me. Yeah. Now, I'm a little different. I put out a lot of social content than most MSPs. Yeah. But this is one of the things, man, and this is even for customers, because I really have 3 things, almost 3 tips outside of what we've been talking with for MSPs these days. One of those is that, because tech guys, historically speaking, are not really good at using tech. Take a look at the social presence that most MSP owners have. It's next to nothing. Right. Look at their LinkedIn. There's like 30 connections for the most part. They're not investing where the world thrives right now. And think about this, okay? I just donated. I'm very big into philanthropy. I started in the church. I'm an ordained pastor. I support financially when things come to me. Yeah. But last month I gave multiple tens of thousands in a donation to a church that's starting. And they call me up like, dude, this is right when COVID hit. They're like, dude, we're putting the live sound up this week. I'm like, you need to stop. Halt. You're not going to be able to meet in person for like 3 months, maybe at the minimum. And then I invest in cameras, invest in a studio. Build that instead. Have the pastor sit, who's a friend of mine, sit in front of his fireplace at his house and start talking to people. Dude, they did this. I'm grateful that they listened, because their church of 400 people now, just last month, their Easter video reached over 10,000.
That's wild.
It's insane. But that's where the opportunity is for MSPs too, with social. So, tech guys are traditionally not very good at using tech, social media, ClickFunnels. It's like the shoemaker that doesn't wear shoes.
Yeah.
There's all these tools that are out there for us. ClickFunnels is a way to generate digital leads.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Absolutely.
I don't do cold calls, man. I don't make those kinds of things. Everything comes from social media ads, and we continue to grow and add 2 to 3 new clients every single month on solid MRR.
That's awesome.
And that comes down to that whole, I close 100% of the leads, and a lot of the MSPs think that I did, years ago when I was only doing 300 to 500. I'm like, shoot, my close ratio is like 95%, almost 100%. Exactly.
Yeah.
Then I realized that's because all of them are just super warm referrals.
Yeah.
And when you get down to it, when you have that lead engine driving in, you realize that, you're not so good at that 95 to 100%, and I dropped down to around 15 to 20. And that's probably because I've had a history in sales before that it was that good coming out of the gates.
Right.
When most are probably between like 5 and 10, like closing 1 out of every 10 that's there. You want to be between 20 to 25, of course. But that's one of the things, is always focus on driving more leads, because, or not just driving more leads, but also focusing on that presentation that you have and your sales concept of building that prospect's confidence in what you're telling them, in you, in your company, and in your product or service. So focus on how you're closing these things, not just the amount of leads that are coming through. Do all that, man. You got to build a list. That's like number 3. That's the start. Do something. Get out there. Do a Zoom call, or for if your vertical's law firms, do like a HIPAA compliance thing for law firms or something. Right. Everybody registers for your webinar. Start calling up and getting people enlisted. Have your staff focus on that right now. Because this pivot I'm talking about, man, with these coronapreneurs, if you're not focusing on the offense right now, you're going to be playing defense the entire time and just keep losing ground, to the point to where your valuation is so low that you'll have to either just fold or sell for pennies on the dollar, which I don't want to see anybody in that boat.
Agreed.
I'd rather give them free stuff now and help them along, or have conversations with you and have it go out to them and say, hey, here's 3 things you can do right now, please.
The technology piece, I have a couple questions for you around that. What would be like one thing in the next week, an MSP that, maybe is not savvy in social or top of funnel lead gen? What is one simple thing they could do to dip their toe into the pool, something actionable?
Yeah, that's a great point. Grab your phone, grab your iPhone, grab your Android, start making content right now.
Cool.
It can look like a hostage video. Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Why? Because this is literally everybody right now in their homes doing this. It's more relatable now than ever. My content, I invest heavily in my brand, but my content is very professionally produced. However, some of that stuff isn't as relevant now, because what's relevant is everybody just holding their phone up doing this.
In real. Yeah.
Exactly. You're at your office, I'm in my studio, but there's nobody else. The studio's in my office space that I have.
Yeah.
There's nobody else here right now, because mostly probably the same with you for the most part, even though we're critical infrastructure. I come here because I can, because I own it and I know nobody else is here. That's just how it is. Exactly. But most of the time, man, it's just stuff like this. It's just holding your phone up and start to generate that content. But then you can start sharing those links too. That's actionable, because you can just talk about, hey, law firms, talk to me right now. Or I want to give you one thing. You've got your remote workers working from home. Are they working from home PCs? Or are they working from a business-owned asset? Because especially if you're dealing with electronic health records with workers' comp claims or medical malpractice or something, you need to make sure that you're still compliant with HIPAA with everybody working from home. That's a 15-second story.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Great advice. That's great. Just do it.
Exactly.
When you have time, just do it.
Oh man, it's going to suck. It's going to suck the first couple of times that somebody does it. I look back even at my first podcast like, oh Lord, and everyone's like, oh, that was great. I'm looking at myself. You're your worst critic, right? This was horrible. But that's what it's going to look like to you when you first pick up your phone. But the more you speak, the more you talk, the more fluent and smooth you will become over time.
Agreed.
Then you get in front of people on Zoom, you know, even if it's just 20 people. I mean, last week I was in front of 150 people because I was invited to talk about at a C-suite virtual conference. It was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
But I didn't start there. It takes just picking up your phone and starting with this thing. That's the thing to do this week. I would say, you said next week. I wouldn't even wait, man. You can do this today.
We got one more day and a half. Get it done.
Right on. Yep, you got it. Do it today for sure, man. That's awesome. I love it.
Cool.
But yeah, dude, this could be the gold rush. It really could. And I want to give people hope in this. And it's not really right now. It's really later on this year is when that gold rush could happen, because everyone's kind of in that protect mode right now. But as we pivot through these next couple of weeks, next couple of months, if you just serve your clients, serve your customers right now in their time of greatest need, you know, there's some unique ways that I've done that, and people can reach out to me. You know, like this was cool, being able to, I didn't intend to make the owners cry. You know, it was 4 women that own a physical, occupational, and speech therapy for kids, which is medical. But I was able to give them 3 months with completely no payments. And I don't even do terms, man. I've never done contracts or anything like that, but I found the right relationship with an underwriter to fund 3 years worth of that if they sign for 3 years and give them deferred payments for 90 days.
That's cool.
Most are in this boat, man. And when I told them this, I mean, they started crying on the Zoom call, all 4 of them with this, because they called me up and they said, Rick, you know, first they wanted to talk to me, of course, because I'm the owner, and said, Rick, we want to let you know what's going on. You know, because of, even though we're medical and kids need physical therapy, kids need speech therapy, nobody's bringing their kids in because there's other kids around.
Right.
So while we're shifting to teletherapy and telemedicine right now, we know that we need ReachOut. We know that we need you more than ever, but we just can't pay you.
Right.
Because their revenue went to 0 overnight with this. And then they tell me we had to lay off all 30 of our therapists. And I'm like, all right, you know what? Give me 24 hours.
Yeah.
Dude busted up the phone and started working on this for them and came back. I'm like, you guys have never been on a term. You've been here for 5 years. They're like, we'll sign anything. We're with you. We know we need you, you know, and you've done great work for us. If you can do 3 years, I can give you 3 months completely free. And that's when, man, it just, even in that. So it was a win-win, because I keep them around as a client, because you know, and I still would have worked something out, but this was the best possible way, man, to help lift them up and serve them in this time, to help their transition, their pivot while they were in that protect mode, because I don't want MSPs to stay in that protect mode too long. I want them to push forward into that pivot mode so they can start looking at thriving with their customers again 6 months from now.
Right.
The soonest you can get out of that defense mode, the better it is for you, and start looking into that pivot, because nothing's going to be the same, man. Just like my story about the church is never going to be the same again. The old way of doing things.
Right.
MSPs are never going to be the same again. If you're smart and you make that pivot, you're going to thrive again 6 months from now.
When I think another thing that you touched on is an underlying opportunity here to strengthen those existing client relationships.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Through the tough time, and you have like widened the moat, heightened the walls on those business relationships and long-term business. So in addition to being able to pivot and take advantage of the opportunities that are going to present themselves here, you've solidified that base beyond just a vendor, you know, client relationship. You're like, this guy's a partner in my business and helped me through one of the worst times they probably experienced inside of their professional career. So
you got it.
Super cool.
Absolutely, man. I love that. That's what fulfills me, man. If I'm not helping other people, I'm not personally fulfilled. Right. Whether that's clients, whether that's other MSPs, whatever it is, you know, even our conversations just with each other, you know, I feed off of this, what we're doing right now, man.
Same here. Yeah, it's fun. You know, I'm making like mental pointers. I should have a note card, because there are 2 or 3 things. This is really good.
We're recorded. It's all good.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I get to go back and listen.
Yeah, you do. I'm sure you've got someone that'll do the show notes too. So you could like look at bullet points along the way. Right on, man.
So I have another specific question for you. What has surprised you the most over these last 4 weeks?
It was probably the denial at first with most that this is something, and it really has nothing to do with how bad the virus is, the death toll or how many are actually infected, anything like that. It was more so the denial. I mean, from the country's leadership all the way down, to just everyone else, that thinking that this was going to be over super fast.
Right.
And here's the singular reason why, man. It has nothing to do with the economy. It has nothing to do with how you feel when it should open back up again. It has nothing to do about how businesses are being affected or how families can't pay their mortgage. It's one single thing: the power of fear.
Yeah.
And that's what was sort of delayed, because what happens when, if you're not used to a certain kind of stress or a certain kind of fear, what do you typically do? You freak out and you run away from it, right? You turn back, yeah, rather than facing it head on. And that's where that denial that surprised me, because at first but I've seen this before. I built my MSP in the middle of the recession, the last recession.
Yeah.
I've seen it. So I'm like, oh, this is feeling pretty familiar to me. But those who have not been, or maybe, went through as a different industry, not necessarily in real estate or something like that before, or B2B services that took a hit last recession, they might not have seen anything like this before. Even though I'm 40, I say I'm 40, and sometimes I say that I'm only 40, but I've been doing this for 12 years now.
Yeah. Okay.
It is a long time. So I'm not young, but I'm not elderly either. I've seen one or two things, I've done one or two things, and this just had a familiar feeling. But as I'm looking around, I started looking up at really the fear in everyone. And that's where I felt that most were denying what was happening for real. And it has nothing to do with the tragedy of the amount of deaths or the amount of infections or the economy closing down. It was just more so all of those put together, and people not knowing what is going to happen and when's that going to happen, whether it's a turn for the worse or a turn for the best.
Yeah.
It's really the power of fear, man. That's been the biggest driver out of this. And with clients, with my staff, with churches that I support, with everyone, it's just being that encouraging voice to them and saying, we will get through this together. Not denying the suck factor right now, because it's very real. There's
a reality out.
Yeah, but that's facing that fear, man, because the only way that you can overcome that, was it Tony Robbins, I think, that said, if I'm scared, then I must. I don't know. It might have been him. I'm probably misquoting somebody. I don't know. But that's how I always, if there's something that scares me, I know, well, I got to tackle this thing.
Yeah.
It's in front of me as a challenge, because the greater the challenge, the greater the wall in front of you means that there's an even bigger breakthrough on the other side. That's another thing that I've always looked at, which ties back and calls back to what we were talking about. The situation you're dealt with, how you respond or react to that. Yeah. You got it. When you look at the scenario and think, I've noticed this in my life. If you see more oppression and more resistance coming your way, that means that there's an even greater breakthrough on the other side.
Yeah, that exactly ties back to the how are you gonna? What's the attitude? What's the point you're gonna take as these things come across your bow? Because this isn't going to be the last either, right? So
it's not.
You're struggling now. Now, work to get your mind right. Work to get your mind right.
Yeah.
Have those actions. Take the right actions.
You got it.
Talk with people. Listen to stuff that's
Lord, please, yes.
What you put in your mind, is going to have it's going to affect the outcome of how you operate.
Right on. Get in bed with your wife, your husband more. Now's the time to become closer than it is to just drift apart. Even in marriage and your other relationships, man, get closer with people during this time.
Agreed. All right, this is going to get a little. We'll see if it gets philosophical.
We haven't been that at all yet.
Yeah. We haven't gotten deep. So if you could talk to your younger self, seeing all that you've accomplished in different areas of your life, and in business and in speaking and encouraging others, what would you say to yourself? What wisdom would you give your younger self at this point in life?
Just get out there and start doing it, whatever it is, whatever that dream of yours is, whatever, if I was talking to my 23-year-old self, 22-year-old self, even though how we were talking in my origin and how I went through those different transitions, and I learned a lot working for other people, man, I had that itch inside of me, that entrepreneurial spirit since I was 18. And I had an opportunity to start when I was 21, but I had that comfortability of a paycheck coming in until I didn't. When I was laid off. And that was I guess now's the time when I could have started 7 years prior, and it's the phrase I use a lot is, 20 years ago was the best time to plant a tree. The next best time is right now, today. And that's how I look back at my life. I learned a lot through those times, through those 7 years when I could have started something and could have launched something, but I always knew that I was meant to be the leader and build something because I always wanted to impact other people. Yeah. So if you've got that drive inside of you, you have to just start. Put yourself in a position. For me, it was the comfortability. And if I was telling my younger self, it's like, dude, you need to get uncomfortable, because that's the only way that you're going to grow, is if you make yourself uncomfortable. Burn that net, kill all the safety precautions, just go after it, man. Don't wait, because I could have been 7 years ahead of where I'm at right now. Right. And it's not a regret. I don't look at it as a regret. It's just, now I made the mistake. Hopefully other people can learn from my mistakes. Yeah. Look at me and see where I fell so that you don't have to fall the same way.
I love that. Very cool. In winding down, is there anything that you really want to make sure that you leave the audience with before we sign off together?
Yeah, especially since these are my people, right? These are your people. These are MSPs or IT business owners, whatever way you want to call it. Don't think that it's going to be business as usual. Understand that there's a pivot in the marketplace that's taking place, and there's decisions that have to be made very quickly. Actually, if you haven't made them yet, you're probably behind the times. It's not that you don't have hope anymore, no, but you just have to act a little bit quicker right now. And that's that pivot that we've been talking about, because this could be the gold rush for us. Now's not the time to try to claw at opportunities. Now's the time to serve. And like I was talking about, serve first, there's a tagline there that I don't have on the canvas, but it's serve first and the money will always follow. Exactly. If you do that and focus that way, the gold rush will happen for you 6 months from now. I know it's going to hit. However, if you don't make those pivots right now, or maybe you don't want to because it takes energy, it takes a lot of mental stamina to do this. Right. It could be possible to, selling right now is not a bad move, or merging in with somebody else, as we've been talking. But all of that coupled together, now's the time to pivot. Because what happened before is not going to be the same that it was. Everything changes from this point on, and it can change in a very, very good way.
Agreed. Well, dude, this has been awesome.
Dude, I appreciate you.
Truth bombs all over the place.
Right on, yeah.
This is a note takers podcast here. This is one. Lay it down, journal it out. I feel like there's been some really cool tidbits that have been really unique in our conversation.
Yeah, man.
Versus conversations that I've been having. So, thank you for that unique perspective. And as a busy man, thank you for your time, because dude, that's the thing we can't make more of. So I'm very grateful for you spending the time with me, with all of our listeners, and just laying it out. And it's been
Ryan, you're awesome. I appreciate that you do this, because bringing people hope in this time is just something that's even more important, man. So kudos to you. I appreciate you for doing that.
Appreciate that.